Good morning, everybody. I'm just gonna wait a couple of minutes so that everyone can get in here. Gotta drop some links here and there. Let's see. Drop a link over here. All right. Good morning. Hopefully you guys can see my screen, hear my voice. Looking like we might be okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let everybody know we're live in Discord, on YouTube. So, good morning. This is prep for Wednesday, February 23rd. And what a fun market we have had. Yesterday was such a great day for trading. You know, sometimes with all this news that is going on, sometimes we need to keep in mind that, you know, with the threat of war looming and all the conflict going on, we still have to keep things in perspective. The market cannot just dive, uncontrolled. It's going to go down and then it's going to come back up and then go down further, that kind of thing. So, don't come in with a bias because of headlines or anything like that. Can news affect the market? Absolutely. But it's not for us to interpret how the news will affect the market in our own opinions. It's up to us to interpret how big money is reacting to news. So, as we like to teach and preach, try to show up every day unbiased. Don't have a want to go long, don't have a want to short. Have a thesis for both directions, and have a list of signals that you're watching for a trade in either direction to follow your thesis, right? So, yesterday we saw that we held this daily squeeze bottom, held it till a lower time frame set in. Then we bounce off of that and fire up, right? Caught a little fade pre-market. We went long off of these VWAP taps. And then once we arrived back at this zone that we had called out, and it's these zones from the sell-off from a few weeks ago now, right? Once we arrived at those zones and saw the rejection, we went short back down to the daily squeeze cloud, right around the time that Biden came on and started talking. Again, we react to how the market reacts. Everything aligned well once we got back down at this squeeze bottom for call options arriving back at the beast buy zone. So we took our shot going long. off of these levels from pre-market, right? Off of this daily Keltner in the middle of this daily squeeze. We went long off of that, rode it back up to this lower zone. So you can see I've got two key price points marked here. That's where we rejected early in the day. And then we fought back to the second set, rejected there, and slipped again. I mean, ultimately we closed nice and back up, but our track record yesterday was long, locked them up, got about a triple, short, lock it up, got about 5x, long, lock it up, got about 4x, short, and we locked it up getting another 4x. So, very lucrative day. Going into today, again, we will have no bias and we'll read what we've got. So, we've still got our daily squeeze support, our first Keltner down, these two key levels. We're back above 4,300, and 4,300 kind of aligns with what I'm going to assume is a 30-minute squeeze that we are in. So coming into the day, we have a 30-minute, 1 hour, 2 hour, and 4 hour, and daily. So we are squeezing on all time frames, right? A lot of those squeeze tops are aligning back up at the zone that we rejected yesterday. So we have resistance there with the squeeze tops and previous rejection point. To the downside, our squeeze bottom is kind of aligning with the overnight lows. And darn it, one of my studies is not on that I want. Should wait for that study to come back up. Excuse me. Let's step down to a lower time frame. So we've got our macro view. We caught a nice bounce. We are fighting back up to where we were on Friday and Friday's lows, right? Need to kind of hold Friday's lows in this zone from 43.18. 43.18 up to 43.27 and a half. You can kind of see we have an intraday range for today. So for today, these levels are important. These are kind of, let's say, an opening range. If we can hold the top side and this key level, that 43.27, that would be a nice spot to go long, back up to the squeeze top, about 20 or 30 points above. If we lose this zone right around this key level, we can easily slip back down. The middle is going to be 43.13, right near these squeeze bottoms, and the bottom of this intraday range is just below 4,300. So if we start to lose 43.27, we can head down to 43.13 and 4,300. If we can hold here, we can start to push up to the squeeze tops. Who knows, we might start to pump into open and open way too close to these squeeze tops. Then it provides a better risk to reward to the downside. But ultimately, we're in a lot of squeezes. Let the squeezes be the guide. 30-minute, pretty much aligning with the overnight highs and lows. So, got to see if one of those breaks first. We are gapping up nicely. ES up 30 points. It looks like NQ's up about 143. And again, kind of the same scenario, right? NQ ran up, hit some key levels that have been resistance in the past, rejects, falls back. Here's your daily squeeze cloud and daily Keltner. that it almost tapped, but ended up tapping instead. What is this? Come on. A 30-minute squeeze bottom. So, bounced off that, back up near the top of the 30-minute squeeze, back to the middle, pretty much. Nice little gap up. So, intraday, we're starting to kind of hit the top zone, right? And we've got 13,974.25. We want to see that hold. And maybe as low as some of these little pre-market lows, like around 13,952. If we can hold there, we can push up to the top of these squeezes and back up to 14,000 and above, to 14,100. The squeezes aligning with yesterday's highs and lows on the higher time frames. On the lower time frames, they're aligning with pre-market high and low. So we've got a few ranges here. See what we get first. Oh, that reminds me, do we have any econ data? Let's go take a look real quick. Whoop. And pull up the economic calendar. Tuesday, we have the S&P Case-Shiller Home Price Index year-over-year change. The FHFA, I'll pull this over so you guys can see. Oh, that was yesterday, darn it. Okay, Wednesday, we have nothing on the economic calendar. So that's good. While we're at it and taking a little break from diving down these charts, let's take a quick look at news and earnings. Ukraine issuing a state of emergency. VIX is down below 30, down near 28. Sorry, I am just kind of scrolling through our news section, which I highly recommend that everybody checks out every morning. Definitely come in to look if anything has got some upgrades, downgrades, that kind of thing. I don't think I saw any of our key tickers that we watch with any upgrades, downgrades, and then always worth coming in and looking at news. You know, it's going to be a lot of Russia news right now. So at least scroll through here and get caught up. But obviously, there's not been any kind of crazy news that has caused us to go back down. Oh, one more thing before we move on. Earnings this week. Nothing huge on my radar. We do have, you know, some of your retail, Home Depot, Macy's, Krispy Kreme, Cracker Barrel. Don't want to miss that one. Then we have Teladoc, some more retail with Lowe's, Overstock, a bunch of that. I don't have a huge interest there. eBay. Etsy is coming this week. Could save it because Etsy's kind of been getting beat up. We also have Moderna, Coinbase, Block, which what used to be Square, right? Now it's Block. So a little bit more at the end of the week. There are some interesting earnings coming up. Wayfair, Nikola, Norwegian Cruise. So maybe some interest here at the end of the week, but not a ton for me. As you know, I kind of focus a little more on tech. So moving on. So NQ, want to see it hold this 974 and this little zone that we've got. If it starts to lose that, we can visit these pre-market lows at 920 and get as low as this zone around 830 to 844. I will say 844 has been very key. We tried to hold it yesterday, got below it, resisted it for a second, then it came back and was support. So we'll see if we get back down to test that. Only 830, and we're fading towards VWAP in this zone, so let's see what we get. Wouldn't be surprised for a bounce at VWAP and to open back near some of these highs around open. You know, with a gap up, we'll see if we fill the gap or if we have a gap and go, just to get rejected and brought back to fill the gap. Ready. Oh, the ready is right around this key 2000 level. It's already started to get below its intraday top. So keep an eye on that. I've kind of been talking recently on how the ready seems to be reacting first and overswinging, and it's been a good gauge for what might be the next change in trend. So we'll see. But it is already getting close to its lows. So we'll see if the rest of the market, the rest of the indices do the same, and we'll see where ready bounces and if it can make its way back above this zone before open. But ultimately, you know, same thing. We're squeezing on all time frames, and our intraday zones are kind of aligning with those squeezes. Keep an eye on pre-market high and low, but also keep an eye on VIX today. We'll review that right after YM. So we've got a zone on YM around this 33,694 from the overnight. We have come back to it and setting in higher lows, almost kind of an inverse head and shoulder. So if we can hold this zone around this 3369 into open, we could see a nice pop up to these squeezed tops. You know, keep an eye out for high of day if we actually do make it up there. Yesterday's high of day. If we get stuffed at these cloud tops, these pre-market highs, or if we start to slip below this zone, we can go back to pre-market lows. Our intraday lower support is right back down at this squeeze, daily squeeze bottom. So we'll see if we try to push through pre-market high, yesterday's high, get back to yesterday's pre-market, or if we reject those and need to go retest the lows. Real quick, let's take a look at VIX before I get into specific names. So, you know, just like I was talking about when I started the stream, don't come in biased thinking that it's time to short the entire market because of the bad news with the war. You know, VIX popped up just enough to kind of hit its squeeze top, fell right back while the market rallied. Then VIX hits a key zone. Our intraday top support, it hits a key level, slips it, but ultimately then gets above it and pushes off of it. There was the sign that it was time to short the market. It gets right back up above 30, it runs up, can't get to this pre-market high, rejects squeeze top. This is where the market bounced. VIX bled back near this key level, didn't even tap it before it bounced. So VIX is going to be a good gauge today. We are back below that 2879. Back below 28.50, rejected at pre-market, and we are below our intraday. So if we can stay below the intraday, below 28, below 28 and a half, maybe as high as 28.79 for a rejection, then we can have a nice rally day. Or ultimately, what I think might happen, VIX will probably hold 28 and settle in here. If we get a good slip in the market, we might get up to test 30. Right now, 30 is very, very key on VIX. Mark it on your charts and be ready. Anytime we're at VIX, it's going to give us a very key indication, or anytime we're at 30 on VIX, it's going to be a very key indication if we are going to drop more or pop, right? In the morning, we bounced above for a second, we got a little drop, and then when we fell back below 30, that was a very good sign to go long. Once we bounce and we are on our way back, we were short, back above 30, it accelerates, right? So 30 is very key right now. Keep an eye on that. Let's see, we'll dig into some names. Apple. Apple, you know, a great gauge for tech and for the market. It slipped, bounced, slipped, bounced, slipped. Same pattern the market did yesterday, right? We mark our key levels, and we are prepared for attack. I mean, look, it set a low zone, ran up, stuffed. We run right back to that low zone, and we oscillate and settle in between. Right now we're getting back near where we stuffed yesterday at about 166 and a half. We're at 165 and 3/4, so not too far to get to see if we're going to get stuffed again. Aligns with this 30-minute squeeze top, peaking above the 166 and a half-ish. If we get rejected again, we could revisit some of these lows. I really like this mid-range level for our zone today. And if you're new to predicted trades, this is basically an intraday zone that should be support and resistance that we can read off of, play off of. If you're already in our server and in our membership, it should look familiar. But basically, on Apple, would like to see us hold above the midpoint of today's range. We're already pumping nice, but you know, we've rejected. We'll probably, if we don't get back up to this before open and try to push through, we could slip to our support at 165.20-ish, catch a bounce back to 166 to 166 and a half. If that rejects, we could go as low as this 164. We could go as low as this 163 and a half, which would get us back to the bottom. So we've got some great levels, squeezes to deal with on Apple. Let's see what we get today. Amazon. Right at 3,000. No, up at 30, 34. Okay, closed around 3,000. It was relatively strong in the morning. Gave it all back. There's a daily Keltner and squeeze cloud that it bounced at. Love it when they stack together and we get confluence, and then it gives it a hard tap and bounce, right? Let's see, we are above our intraday supports. So keep an eye if we slip to 312, we'll call it 310 to 320. We could catch a nice bounce there to head back up to these highs. If we go below there, probably going to retest the daily Keltner. Facebook been getting its butt beat. Had an okay day yesterday, but overall, Facebook not a strong mover lately. I was asked, what are your thoughts on Facebook by a couple of folks? What are your thoughts on Shop? What are your thoughts on Roku? On these names that have sold off hundreds, and on Facebook, Roku and Shop have sold off hundreds. Roku got down near 100 when it used to be, mission 500. Can it get to 500? Shop is down more than half from its highs, right? Facebook is down 100 points, one of the mega caps, one of the FANG tent poles. It's down 100 points. Like, there is a time that these are going to be ready to play again, but it's not up to us to decide when they are ready to play again. And trust me, you don't want to be the first person into the long position when it still hasn't found its feet or figured out if it's going to go up. So, Facebook, Shop, Roku are kind of on my no-touch list until they prove that they are ready to start moving back up, meaning big money and investors are interested in buying them again. Because right now, they're kind of living in short-to-pop environments. So, not a huge focus for me right now. Shouldn't be for you either. Plenty of opportunity on other names. Very tight little range here. Basically, Facebook should try to hold 200. Below that, it's going to get ugly. And we can start to push our way to 205, 210, blah, blah, blah. But Facebook's pretty beat up. It still says it has an ATR of 12. Are we getting $12 moves every day? No, we're getting $5 moves at best. So, patience. Google. Google is usually leading tech. It's not been the strongest lately. But I do at least like how it's starting to base. Obviously, this doesn't look like basing, but yesterday provided a good base. Got a little gap up on her. Let's see if it wants to go back and retest 2624, 2610, 2600. And fill the gap, kind of. Would get us back to 25.99-ish. Or 96. We are right near the squeeze top on Google. So I'm kind of, like on most of these names, I'm smelling pop-up and rejection. Head back for a higher low than yesterday's, right? Call it 2600, call it 2610. Kind of thinking we're going to get a rejection, a little bit of the gap fill, maybe not the full thing. Then we could take off for some good long action. Try to get back to this daily 8. We've got the daily 21, daily 200 right up above 2700. So I'll be looking at the 2700s, 2750s, maybe as close as the 2680s, because it aligns right with the daily 8. But got to see what it does. If it proves itself, we may need to head lower before we head higher. Hopefully that concept is not new to you guys. Just like we couldn't head lower yesterday, we needed to head higher. We might still need to head a little higher before we ultimately do any kind of big moves lower. We do have the third Keltner down below, and we pretty much held second yesterday. So typically we'd be looking for a reversion back to the mean before we start doing any more shorting back through the daily Keltners. So moving on, Microsoft had great relative strength in the morning, and the afternoon provided another nice long, went the way of the market, gapping up nice, kind of near yesterday's highs. So Microsoft could be a great gauge for can we actually gap and go through these clouds, or are we going to get hung up at yesterday's highs and go back for a little bit of gap fill? But love Microsoft. You know, these lower time frames starting to thin out. Let's set a higher low, start to push through them, get back to 295 and 300. 300 aligns with the daily mean, the daily 21, daily 15, and we have the 200 at 297, the 8 at 295. So 1, 2, 3 nice big targets above. Netflix did not show relative strength yesterday. Looked okay in the morning. Didn't look as nice as Roku. But ultimately, pretty much when it filled the gap, it just died, right? It's catching a nice gap up, but relative strength-wise, not going to be one of my top picks. But we'll see. Let's see. I want to see Netflix hold this 380, 379 and a half. Maybe as low as this 377. And then it could set up some good longs to get back to 385, 390. Yesterday's high around 392 with a mission of 400 in sight. The daily 8 is around this 292, yesterday's high. And the next daily average is up at 405 at the daily 15. So if we can fight above this 392 and daily 8, we could push off of it to get back to 405. 400 would be a great strike to keep an eye on. But Nvidia, on the other hand, was relatively strong, right? And if the idea of relative strength doesn't make sense, let's just review these two charts. Nvidia hits 200, holds, bounces, does slide back with the market, does not set a new low of day, taps the same 200, rip back up. We hit this a couple of times yesterday, right? Those 250s went about $1.50 to almost $3, and they came back for about 80 cents to $2, and they closed around 90 cents. We swung them, and they're probably going to open back around $2 from 90 cents. So swing is looking good so far. So yeah, relative strength, chips are looking strong for the long side. So if we can hold, right, not start heading back lower, if we can hold some of these pre-market lows, set in a higher low from yesterday, holding something key like this 232 to 233, anywhere in there. As long as we stay above that, this is a great long opportunity with the mission of getting back to 240, 245, which is the daily 8 right now, and 250 aligns with the daily 21 and the daily 15. So great gauge there. Do we need to get back and test the 200 again? I don't think so on NVIDIA, but she'll follow the market if the market wants to get back to test yesterday's lows. But ultimately, I love this setup on NVIDIA. Going to still keep an eye on the 230s and the 225 puts as a gauge for if there's an opportunity on a rejection and pullback and slight gap fill, right? But not really dying to do the downside on this unless the whole market is weak. So love NVIDIA long this week. Keep an eye on those 240s, 245s, 250s. We'll hit QQQ. Spider, Tesla, and we'll probably call it. QQQ was great yesterday. This little dip provided some great opportunity on the 340s, 342s. Then we switched up to the 340s, 338s. Then we were back in the 338s, 340s. And then I think we shorted the 340s again. Oh, it was just such a great day yesterday. On the Qs, all in all, we are in a trend up, right? It would be worth drawing a trend line from some of these lows, connecting them. If we start to break that trend line from the lows, we'll start to revisit this intraday zone top or middle around 339, 338, which would set in a higher low from yesterday. So any of these really could be a great bounce point. This squeeze is coming up to meet that zone. So if we do reject and go back to fill the gap, want to see us hold right around this 336 to 337. We could bounce before that at like 338, 339. But these will be the key levels I'll be playing and watching. I'll be watching the 340 and 338 puts. And I'll be watching the 343s and 345 calls as gauges with the beast. Roku. Beat up after earnings, much like some of the other thing, and it's been beat up, from 400 down to 162 and almost down to 100, right? So it did have relative strength yesterday, did not even try to go back near lows, just put itself into a zone, which the gap up is not affecting it and actually keeping it in that zone. So not a huge focus for me, but you do have the daily 8 up around 140, 142 with the daily Keltner and the daily 8. The daily 21 MA is around 155. So all in all, not bad. Has to get through yesterday's highs to really start getting up to 140, 145, 150, 155. So I'll keep an eye on those calls with Beast, but actually Roku's been so beat up, we don't have a lot of Beast numbers registered because a lot of these calls used to be way in the money. So, like I said on these names, Roku, a shop, they are just so beat up. Give them time. I'm not going to rush into them. SPY. Let's see, much like ES. Had a fun day yesterday, little gap up. Look at that. I bet we get a little bounce near VWAPs and start pushing into open. We're already starting to get that on these names. Watch this trend line from the highs. If it carries us into open, if we start to break through. Overall on Spider today, I'll be watching the 332s, 334s, 335s. I'm sorry, 435s, 434s, 432s, because we're opening around 432. To the downside, I'll be watching those 432s, the 430s, the 428s. Just in case we need to come back and test where we bounce, rejected, bounced, key level, just like on NQ, I believe it was the 13844. We have a very key level on SPY at this 428.86. So let's see if we reject, come back, can bounce right around 430.50. That's where I'd like to see us bounce. But we could go as low as 428.66 to catch a good bounce, which aligns with some squeeze bottom action. So we'll see if the 30-minute squeeze can hold us up and keep us going. If we lose that, we'll be down to the hour squeeze and that 428 in some of these key levels. So last but not least, we'll look at Tesla. Tesla. Nice and strong off the 200. Got about up to that 850. A rejection right back down to 800, 801. But fought its way out of this daily cloud just to get rejected again at the 200. Now we're above the 200. We've had a few wicks, like we want to go retest some 200s and maybe even this zone around 822. So pay attention to these kinds of wicks. What I've been finding lately is they can be foreshadowing a little bit. I'm expecting a rejection in a lot of names, so we'll see if Tesla tries to bleed back to this 830, 822, very key number in the past, for a bounce, a higher low to make the journey back to the 850s, 875s, right? Gonna be keeping an eye on the 850s, 875s, maybe 900s. Gonna be keeping an eye on these 800s, 780s, stuff like that. But all in all, keep an eye on VIX. Gonna be a great gauge. If we can stay under 30 and under 28, we can definitely see more upside today. If we have that pullback I keep talking about, keep an eye that we can stay under 30, or if we get above it for a little bit, that we get right back down under it. Otherwise, we could slip further. But ultimately, we got a nice bottom. Nothing really crazy in the whole Russia news. You know, it's not like Biden yesterday said, we're ready to go to war and I'm sending troops over. It's all sanctions, diplomatic solutions. You know, Russia's going to do what they do, and we're going to do what we do. Overall, I don't think, big money's panicking, right? And at the very least, sometimes we do have to go higher before we go lower. So I did see a blip yesterday that technically at the lows, the S&P entered correction territory. We saw the same kind of news blip on NQ and recent sell-offs. I think it was last week or so. So now both have landed in correction territory. We can expect a bounce from here. So overall, every day, show up, do your prep, use your beast numbers as a great gauge, and don't be biased. Have a thesis for each direction. Take the signs and signals that come to you as the trades that you take. A lot of days I'm watching calls and puts. Whatever arrives at Beast first is kind of what I'm playing. Yesterday, our calls arrived at Beast right at open, took those long. Puts arrived at Beast at the same time calls were topping out, switched direction. And then when puts were topping out, calls were back at Beast again. So the Beast can help a lot. Even in what trade do I take first today? Well, wait and watch and see which one lands at Beast. As you know, our motto, no beast, no feast. So I pretty much only take entry at Beast because we should see a reversal there. Thanks for joining us for prep. Thanks for tuning in. I plan to do a webinar tonight or tomorrow night to talk about a number of key topics. Mainly, I've had some questions on how can I hold longer? How can, if I have to step away from the screen, are there certain orders I can issue that can manage the trade while I'm away? So I have a bunch of, awesome tips I want to cover with you guys around that, on how to gauge if you should stay in, on tools that you can use if you have to step away. Also want to cover some, some topics around strike selection, what kind of size to go with on trades, how to know when it's time to size up. These seem to be reoccurring questions I get, so might even cover some of those topics as well. So keep an eye out. Expect a link for a webinar either tonight around 7:30 or tomorrow around 7:30. So it will most likely be tonight. I just gotta double check my schedule. But thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you found this prep helpful. We will be in our Discord server today and live trading just like we are every day from open to close, calling out amazing trades left and right. See you guys in chat. If this is your first time finding us, please check us out at predictedtrades.com. Every day we offer some amazing trade callouts and the tools that you need to be prepared and get the best trades you can in options trading. So, everyone have a great day. See you in chat. Thanks for tuning in.